I'm Mason Mount. You're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
Awesome. All right. Well, obviously waiting to get the finalized details of that loan for Ethan, but really looking forward to what that might look like for him. So getting back to Lampard, specifically discussing some of his squad players that are they going to stay, are they going to go? Dan, before we get into that, D Dorm, he had a couple of comments, one specifically about fitness and one about the movement of the ball that I think will kind of help set up what he's looking for in building his squad.
Yeah, so the comment that he had specifically, and the key part of it, he talked about having 10 days of preseason, having flown to Japan 3 days ago, brings up a lot of difficulties for us physically, and that's why I was very pleased with the players physically. They gave everything in strong humidity with some good individual performances, and I discovered an appetite and attitude to work in the humidity with jet lag for a lot of the players. So, again, Frank continuing to be basically saying all the right things to Chelsea TV and to the media to put the narrative together appropriately. And then the off the ball, talked about the play. Quality of play on the ball was not quite what we wanted. We will get there. In front of goal was a similar thing. We're not quite as sharp as we want to be, but we're working towards that, and I'm confident will come. I've got no fears. I'm happy with big parts of the performance, because we saw is that the on-the-ball play was that 4-2-3-1. When we were off the ball, it was more of a 4-4-2. So you saw someone like Mason Mount or Kennedy or Pedro kind of moving up to be a little bit more level with Batshuayi to kind of push the ball forward, kind of break on a quick counter. And so we're starting to see a little bit about what Frank is trying to do with the squad. We've seen less of that 4-3-3 that we thought we might see, but that's probably due to Willian being out, Callum Hudson-Odoi being out, and a couple of those dynamic players like Pulisic and Mount really just getting started.
So first one that we have quotes are for Kurt Zuma. So right away, Mike, this will be coming to you. Kurt is a very good defender, a very good person and professional, and I want him here. Simple as that. We are competitive with the center backs we've got on the team. He had a very good season at Everton, and I understand why they want him, but he's a Chelsea player, and I want him. He's working really hard, and if he competes for position and plays well this season, then he plays. Love it, Lampard, telling Everton to suck it right out of the gate, and says he wants him. Big flex.
Yeah, Zuma's the kind of player that you want, especially in this situation. He's a proven, Premier League center back. He has a great upside, and again, what we saw in Kurt from the 15-16 season on was that he's, he that big smile that you see on his face when he's playing. He loves to be out there. He's passionate, and I think that we're really, really fortunate to be able to be pulling back a lone player like this in the current situation. And I think him speaking about his being a good person, I think Frank and Jody have said they want players who want to be there, to be at Chelsea. And I think this should be really important to all of us because we're building towards, a better future in which we're just having guys to come in for a little bit and then leaving. We want people we want Chelsea players. So I'm excited, Nick.
I'm interested to see how this works. I think the comments I had last week, were maybe slightly over exaggerated in just saying that his ability to play out of the back just isn't as good as I would say David Luiz, probably Christensen, and most likely Tomori. Honestly, just because we've saw Tomori do it last year. There's real concern there for me, but I would also say that watching him play with Luiz yesterday was really interesting. He looked a hell of a lot more comfortable on the right. He looked like he was the guy who was going to handle a lot of the physical kind of last-ditch challenges and let David kind of move up and start pinging passes over the top. I think, Silves, that's one area to me this year that if they can find the right balance between the center backs and let David Luiz start hitting his trademark 60-yard ball to either wing, I think we're going to be in okay shape there.
Oh, totally. I think, Kurt's a proper defender. I mean, he's tough, he's strong, he's good in the air. He's better than Luiz. He dominates the penalty box. I think you need that alongside like a ball playing centre half. You've got somebody to just do the mucky stuff. You could say Christensen and Rudiger or Luiz and Zoom. There's a real mixed match amongst them. I think Zuma was doing so well before he was crucial at Chelsea. Then he also it's taken a while to get back. Given his body form, the size of him, it takes a while to get back into full steam. And a good loan last year. I'm glad to have him back. Just as a personality around the dressing room as well, because he's got the most infectious smile. When you see him smiling, it's just I love that.
Just wait for him and Conte, right? Those smiles.
Oh yeah,
oh my gosh!
And it's big and small duo. It's gonna be great.
That'd be great. Yeah. No, so I'm looking forward to Kurt having a good season.
Yeah.
Well, and we were so weak in the box last season with both Rudiger and Luiz, and one of Zuma's best strengths is that he is much better in the air than both of those players. And so if we're looking at trying to reassert some physicality, reassert some dominance in the air, where we really struggled last season in defending set pieces and defending corners, this is something that we will see a immediate improvement just from a personnel standpoint, not even a tactical change.
Yeah,
Let's all pray. Let's all pray for the end of zonal marking. No more zonal marking. God. No.
Yeah, I hope so. Because we used to have Drogba being an extra defender. He'd always.
Yeah.
We haven't had anyone a striker defending our box for a long time like that. Because the amount of times Drogba would just get his head on the ball and get it out, and centre halves could pick up a mark. So that's what we need.
And he was always the first man. He was always the first man.
Always won the ball.
Him and Costa. Diego did the same role on set pieces.
He wasn't as good at it, though. I mean,
we know what Didier did with his head in Munich. We will never forget that.
Yeah.
But with Zuma, I think one thing I did want to point out, Mike, I don't know if you saw this. David Luiz will play a 40-yard swing ball and skip Zuma rather than play through the back. I think that's just an interesting dynamic. You gain with Zuma, but you lose some other things. And then also, don't just think about him and David Luiz, right? You got to think about him and Kepa as well, and what that center back and goalkeeper partnership is. Kepa is a phenomenal shot stopper. He's not going to go get the ball out of the air. He's short. We just know his limitations. And that was a weakness for Chelsea last season. So again, if you have an imperious central defender who's going to go clean up everything out of the air and not let anything come at Kepa from short range to kind of protect him because he has limited range, I think that's a big asset as well. So we'll have to see. But again, talk about kudos to the club for getting a good loan for Kurt Zuma. I mean, we thought we were going to sell him last year, and now all of a sudden he's a potential starter. So big ups for Kurt and the club. Next one is Kennedy. Lampard had some interesting words on Kennedy, Nick. Run us through that.
Yes, and this is an interesting guy who I'm, after the preseason a couple of years ago, I'm shocked that he's still kind of in the shirt.
Or that they brought him back to Asia.
I was going to say, that's the other thing. He's allowed back into China.
So there's a lot going on outside of the footballing, but with Kennedy, my feeling coming into a big squad with a transfer ban is that I need to assess the players for as long as I can in preseason to make sure we pick the right squad. If Kennedy continues to show the attitude and play the way he did today, he's making a great case to stay or having been on loan in recent seasons. Nobody is in or out of the squad. It has a line drawn under or over them right now. Everybody is competing to stay in. So I don't know, Mike, it would be a shock kind of given his previous time at the club and all the different positions he's played. But I mean, given that Callum is out for however long, and reports are off and on there on when he's going to be back, and the fact that Williams still, kind of recovering from Copa America, there could be a spot for him early on, maybe.
Yeah, I think the Willian aspect is something we haven't really talked a lot about, and it's kind of a big concern to me, just because that's the depth that we have. I could easily see Kennedy getting 6 months and then being loaned out in the winter transfer window. Again, he has Premier League experience. It's kind of a bit of a head scratcher because obviously there's a lot of talent. I think he's a good example of, what young talented players kind of can do sometimes, just some of the foolishness. I don't know. I think that if anything's, if there was a solution, Frank and Jody, maybe they can pull them under his wing and help him just take his game from a maturity level to the next level. So
I think his problem is that he's so one-footed that, we saw it yesterday. He tried a couple shots with his right, and they were just dribbles. I mean, essentially, just goalkeeper picked him up.
Yeah.
His left foot, however, is like a rocket. And so I think maybe, Dan, where I would, and this is Dormer, not Silves, where I would like to see him is just try him on the right and let him cut in on his left and see if he can be,
Arjen Robben?
a budget Robin.
Poor
Yeah, that's a tall order for anyone to be a budget Robin. So what I would say is that we have Christian on the side now who can play on the left, which would then allow someone like Kennedy to flex over to the right and give us an opportunity there. I just hate the way that when Kennedy gets dispossessed, he basically like stops and pauses like he's a video game and then has to unpause and then continue movement backward or to go track back for a ball. That is probably my biggest problem with him, is that he's not as two-way as a Pedro, as a Willian, as a Christian, Mason, whoever it might be. We do have attacking options. I definitely think Kennedy will not be a part of the squad, and it's less due to that. It's more due to we're going to start to run into an issue where if you want Mishi, if you want Zuma, if you want Kennedy to stay, this was Chelsea Youth tweeting this out. For example, you have to lose Bakayoko, but then to accommodate Pulisic in the Champions League squad, you have to lose one of those other three or someone else altogether, as he can't go into the B list in Europe yet. So like you have to, it's not just about like how many players in each position, but it's also going to be about squad construction. And I think that's where someone like Kennedy is probably more likely to be like a lone candidate. And again, if we end up in a 4-3-3, it's even more likely that Kennedy doesn't make it to the start of the season at Man United.
Yeah, his only chance is a 4-2-3-1. I mean, and that's just a fact. I mean, he's not going to play centrally. So
upside, he's adaptable, right? He could play left back, could play attacking left or right, which Frank said he likes. But I mean, from a winger standpoint, Willian has to come back. You have Pedro, you have Pulisic, right? Callum Hudson-Odoi will be back in the first half of the season. Seems like a realistic window. Yes, September to December, somewhere in there he should be back. So I think that's the biggest thing, is wherever Callum's fitness is and where Lampard sees him. I mean, there's still contract negotiation issues allegedly with that. So I think it's up to Frank to decide where Callum's at to see where Kennedy fits in. And that's kind of where I think he's going to land on him. Definitely a fringe player. I think we'd all agree. One player not on the fringe, we hope, is Mason.
He's not.
Mason
he is
Mount.
No.
Frank, a little bit more promising, excited about him, I'd say, mainly because, right, he worked with him last season at Derby. So Frank said, quote, I thought Mason's performance was really good. It was a continuation of how he played for me last year on loan. His energy is quality, even though he hasn't been with us long. We know Mason is part of the first team squad this year, and it's time for him. His qualities will improve even more with the quality around him. Everyone knows the hope I have for Mason, and he showed a glimmer of what we may see this year and going forward. End quote. Okay, well, definitive. He's in the team.
fringe player.
Frank's just messing with us all. Just screwing with our heads.
Yeah.
Silves. Mason Mount, tons of potential. Looks sharp, looks creative. He played in the number 10 and he played wide right today. What do you think of him? And does he remind you of any maybe former first team players that Chelsea's had?
I think he's got absolutely brilliant talent. In fact, we got him under a new contract is good. I think he'll have a fairly important part in the season. I don't think he'll be a starter, but the boy's got talent. I wonder if he could almost be. He could create a new Lampard, late into box, scoring goals, good range of passing, intelligent player, great awareness. I reckon he'll probably get 20, 25 games this season, because potentially with the Champions League we've got 50 odd games this season, so it'd be good to see him get a chance. I mean, the most important thing about Frank is Jody Morris. He knows these kids so well because he's had most of them since they were like 10, 11, 12, 13. So he knows their mentality, he knows their strengths, he knows their weaknesses, and what a perfect time to integrate him into the squad. I mean, you might find that Mason Mount will save us £50 million in outstanding central midfielder next summer. Could have a really good season for us. Great player. And I think Frank sees that, and Frank knows talent.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this about Mason. part of what I'm looking for from him right now, Mike, is are you willing to just show out in these preseason games? Maybe not always do the right thing or make the exact right play, but are you willing to take on people? Are you willing to take a kind of first time ball and see if you can cross it into the box and maybe Batshuayi's there? Like, I want to see him take a few risks. Same with Christian, honestly.
Yeah.
Take a few risks. We got so stale and boring in the final third last year that we need someone who's going to think differently and try to do something that isn't kind of by the book, playbook style.
Yeah, 100%. I think what we're going to see, the difference maker with Christian and Mason this year is just an intensity, being able to implement Frank's pressing system, and I think hustle and just gritting it out is it's kind of going to be maybe some of that older Chelsea style of, it's not about necessarily more talent, we're just going to want it more. And I think what you see Gallagher's quotes, all these kids talking about how hard they want to play for the gaffer. I think that is going to be a huge shift than what we saw in the previous season. And if the two of them can just run their asses off, it's going to make a difference, especially late in games and with tired legs. Dan.
Well, and you saw what was happening when Mason was off the ball, and I think that's key in this type of system, is that Mason knew when to move forward to kind of make it that front two versus a Batshuayi alone by himself up front, to create an additional option for whether it was Jorginho, whether it was any of the fullbacks who were starting to press the ball forward. He was trying to anticipate a potential turnover so that he could make himself available to have that interchange up front and allow potentially a quick conversion or an opportunity in the box if we're able to turn it over. So he has a lot of awareness. He has a lot of instinctive ability. And again, he's worked under Frank and Jody, under Jody for multiple seasons, and then also under Frank and Jody last season. So if anyone is ready, we talked about the whole Jorginho knowing Sarri's system and being a example of Sarri on the pitch. Mount is going to have instructionally a lot of the understanding of what Frank and Jody are going to want to do on the pitch, which I think is going to earn him a quicker start than I think most people are expecting. And I think he could be a very, very pivotal player for us this season.
It's going to be exciting. We've got some players that, really have an opportunity that without this transfer ban wouldn't have had. And I think that that's a cool, unique situation for them to be in. And it is a protected opportunity for them to take charge, because as of right now, there's no summer signings, there's no January signings. It is this group the entire season going forward. They're going to be playing Champions League. They're going to be playing the top six. They're going to be playing in all the cup competitions. Like, Frank's going to have to rotate this squad. There's going to be minutes to be played, which will be really exciting. So, quick update on the squad from @CareForYou saying Tammy Abraham had tonsillitis, but he should be ready for Barcelona. Aretha Balaga had a stomach bug, should be ready for Barcelona. And then obviously Hudson-Odoi is still recovering from his ruptured Achilles. Apparently should be training soon, allegedly. Again, a lot of differing reports on that, so I don't want to get into it too much. But Dan, I do just want D. Dormer to just review kind of not like how we're going to solve it, but that there are still squad logistical problems with Europe and our European competitions.
Yeah, that's going to be the really interesting thing. And, we obviously have, thankfully now with players like Mason Mount coming into the fold, Loftus-Cheek, Tammy Abraham, so there's different types of registration, right? There's under 21, there's homegrown, there's academy trained, there's all these things that we're going to have to solve for in terms of who ends up staying, who ends up leaving. One of the non-homegrowns should be eligible for the Premier League, but not the Champions League. So that's going to create a little of an interesting wrinkle there, because mainly Pulisic is under 21 in the Premier League, but he will take a non-homegrown spot in the Champions League. So just, again, we're going to have some structural things to figure out, and that's going to be a part of some of the decisions on who gets to stay and who gets to go. But just keep in mind that, squad construction is not all about, who is the best, it is first about who's the best player, and then we kind of work backward from that. And then it's about, how do we develop the depth? And then based upon the depth, where do we then make that decision to say, we're going to overstock in this area with maybe that additional homegrown player. Again, these squad sizes are 25, plus. So at that point, you also can register like unlimited youth players on your B list. So, and pull from that if you really need to kind of fill your squad, effectively. So you've got a lot of opportunity to figure it out, and there's still time to do that. But just there are other factors to keep in mind when we think about how this squad is going to get fully formed in the next couple weeks.